Ethan Cole stood in line with the other soldiers, his armor polished until it shined under the morning sun. The great courtyard of the capital was full of men and women waiting for the arrival of the Queen. It was inspection day, and every soldier knew that one wrong move could end a career. The Queen was young, but already known for her strength. She did not forgive weakness, yet she was respected by the people and feared by the nobles. Ethan tried to keep his mind focused on the duty at hand, but his thoughts wandered. He had always been the type of man who spoke what he thought, even when he should not. It was a habit that often got him in trouble. Still, he never expected what would happen that day. The sound of horns filled the air, and the Queen entered the courtyard. She wore armor as fine as any knight, silver and gold worked into its design. Her long blonde hair caught the light, and a jeweled crown rested on her head. The soldiers bowed as she walked past. Her eyes were calm but sharp, the kind that seemed to look straight into a person's soul. Ethan kept his gaze forward, standing as tall as he could. Yet when she came closer, his thoughts betrayed him. He noticed the way her armor curved around her figure, the way she carried herself with grace. Before he realized it, the words slipped from his mouth, spoken louder than he thought. He whispered. But the whisper carried. Her ass looks perfect. The words left him frozen in place. His heart dropped into his stomach. Silence spread across the courtyard. The soldiers on either side of him stiffened. He could feel their fear as if it were his own. Everyone knew what this meant. A soldier who spoke like that about the Queen had no future left. The Queen stopped walking. She turned her head slightly, her eyes settling on Ethan. For a moment, time itself seemed to stop. Ethan's throat went dry. His mind raced with every punishment that could fall on him. Chains, exile, even death. He wished he could take the words back, but they hung in the air like a blade above his neck. The crowd held its breath. No one dared to move. Ethan waited for the guards to seize him. He thought of his mother back in the countryside, of the farm he had left behind to join the army. He thought of all the battles he had survived, only to be undone by his own foolish tongue. Then something happened that no one expected. The Queen's lips curved into a faint smile. It was not cruel nor mocking, but a smile that carried both amusement and curiosity. She stepped closer, her boots striking against the stone ground. She stopped in front of Ethan, her gaze steady. "You spoke your thoughts," she said, her voice clear and calm. "Most men fear to speak the truth before me. You did not." Ethan tried to speak, but his voice failed him. He lowered his head, waiting for the blade to fall. "Tell me your name," the Queen said. "Ethan Cole, Your Majesty," he managed to say, though his voice trembled. The Queen's smile did not fade. She looked him over, not as a ruler looking at a soldier, but as a person studying another. The silence around them grew heavy. Soldiers and nobles alike waited for her to declare judgment. Finally, she spoke. "You're either very brave or very foolish. I've not yet decided which." The words left the crowd stunned. Instead of condemning him, she let him stand. The Queen turned and continued walking down the line as though nothing more had happened. But everyone knew something had changed. Ethan stood frozen, his heart still racing. He could not believe he was still alive. The soldiers near him whispered under their breath, unable to hide their shock. What he had done should have destroyed him. Yet the Queen's reaction was something no one could have imagined. As she walked away, Ethan dared to lift his eyes once more. She glanced back at him for the briefest moment, her expression unreadable. Ethan did not know what it meant, but he knew his life had just taken a turn he could not yet understand. The inspection ended, but the memory of that moment remained burned into the mind of every soldier who had witnessed it. A single slip of the tongue had opened a door Ethan never meant to touch. Behind that door waited a future beyond belief. The next morning, Ethan was given new armor. It was heavier than what he was used to, made of stronger steel, polished until it shone. The armor marked him as part of the Queen's personal guard. Other soldiers watched as he put it on, some with envy, some with doubt. They whispered to each other that he did not deserve it, that he had only been chosen because of an accident. Ethan heard their words but said nothing. He knew his place now was not to argue, but to prove himself. Training began at sunrise. The Queen's personal guard was different from the regular army. These men and women were faster, sharper, and more disciplined. Ethan struggled to keep up at first. His body ached from the drills, and his arms felt heavy after hours of practice with sword and shield. Still, he refused to give up. Every time he thought of stopping, he remembered the Queen's words: courage and truth. That was what she expected of him. By midday, sweat poured from his brow. His trainer, a tall man named Carter, barked orders at him without mercy. Ethan stumbled more than once, but kept his footing. Carter raised an eyebrow when Ethan did not quit. "You may not be the strongest," Carter said, "but you have heart. The Queen saw something in you. Do not waste it." The days passed quickly, and soon Ethan was called to his first duty inside the palace. He stood at the side of the throne room while the Queen met with her council. The nobles spoke of taxes, trade, and threats from the borders. Ethan stood silent, his hand on the hilt of his sword, but his eyes watched every detail. He noticed how the nobles bowed low, yet spoke with hidden pride. They praised the Queen to her face, but their words were filled with layers of meaning. Ethan could tell they feared her youth and her strength. They wanted her to bend to their wishes, but she never did. She listened calmly, then gave her orders with a steady voice. She was firm but fair, and Ethan could see why the people loved her. When the council ended, the nobles filed out, their faces tight with frustration. Ethan stayed at his post until the room was empty. Then the Queen turned her eyes toward him. "Ethan," she said softly, "tell me what you saw." He blinked in surprise. "Your Majesty, I do not understand." "You were watching," she said. "I saw it in your eyes." "What did you think of them?" Ethan hesitated. He remembered her words about honesty, so he spoke from his heart. "They bow to you, but they do not trust you. Some of them may even plot against you." The Queen smiled faintly. "You see more than you know. Many would not dare to say such things to me, but you did." Ethan felt his chest tighten. He worried he had spoken too freely again, but the Queen's eyes held no anger. Instead, they showed approval. "You are learning," she said. "This is why I wanted you near me. Courage is not only on the battlefield. It is also in speaking the truth when no one else will." The moment stayed with Ethan long after he returned to his quarters. The Queen had not only tested his sword but his mind. He began to understand that guarding her was more than holding a shield. It was about loyalty in every way. As the weeks went by, his bond with the Queen grew stronger, though they spoke only in short moments. A word here, a glance there, yet each one carried weight. Ethan felt something inside him shift, though he could not name it. But not everyone was pleased with his presence. Rumors spread through the palace that Ethan had bewitched the Queen with bold words. Some said he was nothing but a lucky fool who would one day drag her down. The nobles whispered in dark corners, plotting how to remove him. One evening, as Ethan left his training yard, a shadow followed him through the palace halls. A voice spoke behind him, low and cold. "You do not belong here, soldier." Ethan turned to see a nobleman, tall and dressed in fine robes. The man's eyes burned with disdain. "The Queen may trust you now, but she will learn her mistake. And when she does, you will fall." Ethan said nothing. He only bowed his head and walked past, though his fists tightened. He knew the man's words carried a warning. When he lay in bed that night, he thought of the path he had stepped on. A careless word had led him here, into a place of power, danger, and secrets. He did not know what would come next, but he swore to himself one thing. He would not fail the Queen. Whatever test came, he would face it with the same honesty that had brought him this far. Ethan woke the next morning, still unsure if what had happened was real. He sat on the edge of his bed in the barracks, staring at the floor, trying to make sense of it. He had insulted the Queen in front of hundreds of people, and yet he still had his head. No chains, no punishment, no exile. Only a look from her, and words that still echoed in his ears. He thought the whole city would laugh at him, but instead the barracks were filled with whispers. Some soldiers looked at him with envy, others with fear. A few avoided him altogether, as if standing near him might bring bad luck. Everyone wanted to know why the Queen had spared him. Ethan had no answer. When the horn sounded, he lined up with the others for duty. The captain of the guard looked at him longer than usual but said nothing. Ethan kept his head low, hoping the day would pass quietly. But the Queen had other plans. By midday, a messenger came to the barracks. He carried a sealed letter with the royal crest. The room fell silent when he spoke Ethan's name. Hands shaking, Ethan broke the seal and read the words. His heart nearly stopped. The queen had requested his presence in the palace. The other soldiers watched him leave, their eyes filled with curiosity and doubt. Some muttered that he would not return. Ethan himself was not sure he would. He walked the long road to the palace, each step heavier than the last. The tall gates opened for him, and the guards led him inside. The palace halls were grand, filled with paintings and banners. Light poured in through tall windows, making the marble floors shine. Ethan had never been inside before. He felt out of place. A farm boy dressed as a soldier walking where nobles made their lives. At last he was brought to a chamber. The doors opened, and there she stood. Queen Selene, dressed not in her battle armor, but in a flowing gown of silver and white. Her crown rested lightly on her head, and her gaze fell on him the moment he entered. "Ethan Cole," she said. Her voice carried across the room, soft yet firm. "Do you know why you are here?" Ethan bowed his head. "No, Your Majesty." She stepped closer, her footsteps gentle against the stone. "Yesterday you spoke your mind. Many would call it an insult. I'd call it honesty. Too many around me hide their thoughts." "You did not." Ethan's chest tightened. "I did not mean to disrespect you." "I know," the queen replied. Her eyes softened, though her presence was still powerful. "But it is rare for me to see someone unafraid of the truth. Tell me, Ethan, do you always speak what is in your heart?" Ethan hesitated. "Yes, though it has brought me trouble more than once." The queen studied him, as though weighing every word. Then she smiled faintly. "That is why I have called you. From this day forward you will serve not with the regular guard, but as part of my personal guard." The words struck him harder than any blow. Ethan stared, unable to believe what he had heard. "Your Majesty, I am not worthy of such honor." "Perhaps not yet," she said, her tone calm but unyielding. "But I will decide that, not you." Ethan dropped to one knee, his head bowed. His heart pounded in his chest. He had gone from fearing death to being chosen for the most dangerous post in the kingdom. The queen turned to the guards at the door. "See that he is given new armor and trained at once. We will begin tomorrow." The guards bowed and stepped forward to lead him out, but the queen stopped them with a gesture. She looked at Ethan once more, her eyes filled with a meaning he could not read. "Remember this, Ethan Cole," she said. "I do not surround myself with flatterers. I surround myself with those who dare to speak and act with courage. Do not fail me." Ethan bowed again, words caught in his throat. He could only nod. As he was led from the chamber, the weight of what had happened pressed down on him. He had gone from being just another soldier to being noticed by the queen herself. And not only noticed, but chosen. The palace doors closed behind him, and he stepped into the sunlight. His life had changed in a single moment, and he knew nothing would ever be the same again. The night was quiet in the palace, but Ethan felt unease in his chest. For weeks he had noticed the whispers, the sharp looks from nobles, and the cold words meant to push him away. He knew danger was building, though no one spoke of it aloud. The queen trusted him, and that trust made him a target. His duty that evening was to guard the grand hall, where the queen was to meet with foreign guests. The hall was filled with light from tall chandeliers, and music echoed softly from the far end. Guards stood in rows, but Ethan's eyes kept moving. He studied every corner, every shadow, the way his trainer Carter had taught him. The queen entered with grace, dressed in armor lined with gold, her crown shining. She greeted the guests with calm strength. Her voice carried across the hall, steady and sure. The nobles smiled, but their smiles were thin. Ethan could see the tension hidden behind the surface. Hours passed, and the gathering continued. Yet Ethan's heart would not settle. Something felt wrong. His hand rested on the hilt of his sword as he scanned the room. Then he saw it. A servant moved through the crowd, carrying a tray of wine. His steps were too quick, his eyes shifting too often. Ethan's body tightened. The servant's hand slipped beneath the tray, and in an instant a blade flashed in the light. Ethan did not think. He broke formation and rushed forward. The crowd gasped as he tackled the man to the ground. The tray crashed, goblets shattering across the marble floor. The blade clattered, but not before the man tried to strike upward. Ethan caught the strike with his arm, the steel scraping against his armor. Pain shot through him, but he held fast. The guards surrounded them, dragging the man away. Ethan stood, breathing hard, his arm stinging where the blade had cut. He looked to the queen. She stood calm, her eyes fixed on him. The hall erupted in noise. Nobles shouted, guests demanded answers, and guards struggled to restore order. Ethan could hear his own heart pounding, but he kept his gaze on the queen. She raised her hand, and silence fell. Tonight, she said, her voice firm, we have seen betrayal, but we have also seen loyalty. Our eyes lingered on Ethan. One soldier stood when others froze. Remember his name, for he is the reason I live. The nobles shifted uneasily. Some glared at Ethan with anger, others with fear. He bowed his head, feeling every eye on him. Later that night, he was called to her private chamber. The queen stood by the window, the moonlight falling across her face. She turned when he entered. You saved my life, she said simply. Ethan shook his head. I only did my duty. Her eyes softened. Many guards were here, yet only you acted. Do not lessen what you have done. He said nothing, unsure how to answer. The queen stepped closer, studying him as if she could see through his soul. You are different, Ethan, she said. The others bow with words, but not with hearts. You give me both truth and loyalty. That is rare. Ethan felt his chest tighten. I am only a soldier, she smiled faintly. Perhaps. But you are also more. The room grew quiet. Ethan felt the weight of her words, though he did not know what they meant fully. Still, he knew one thing. His bond with her had grown stronger than before. The next day, the city buzzed with news of the attempt on the queen's life. Stories spread that she had been saved by a single guard. Ethan's name traveled across the markets and taverns. Some called him a hero, while others whispered that he was too close to the throne. The nobles gathered in private chambers, their anger burning. They saw Ethan as a threat, a man too plain to hold such power, yet too loyal to be moved. Their plans grew darker. If one assassin failed, another would be sent. Ethan knew nothing of their exact plots, but he felt the danger around him grow heavier each day. He trained harder, stood longer at his post, and watched every shadow. He knew that more trials were coming. At night, when he closed his eyes, he remembered the queen's words. You are different. Those words gave him strength, even as fear gnawed at the edges of his mind. He swore again that he would not fail her, no matter the cost. The court thought him only a simple soldier who spoke without thinking. But now, after standing against blade and shadow, Ethan began to see that his place beside the queen was more than chance. It was fate. And fate was leading him toward a future he could not yet see. The day of the great assembly came. The palace was filled with nobles, soldiers, and citizens who had been invited to witness a grand speech from the queen. Word had spread quickly through the capital that she would address the attempt on her life. Many wondered if she would punish the nobles who had failed her, or if she would reward the soldier who had saved her. Ethan stood at the edge of the throne room, his armor polished, his sword at his side. He felt the eyes of the crowd on him. Since that night, his name had been whispered in every street. Some called him loyal, others called him reckless. He could feel both praise and envy weighing on his shoulders. The queen entered the hall, her crown shining in the light of the chandeliers. She moved with steady grace, her gown trailing behind her like silver water. The crowd bowed deeply as she took her place at the throne. Her eyes scanned the room, calm yet full of power. People of the realm, she began, her voice carrying across the chamber. You know of the danger that has touched us? Betrayal was found in our halls. A hand was raised against me, and it could have ended in silence and grief. The crowd shifted uneasily. Whispers filled the air, but she raised her hand, and silence returned. But there was one who stood before me when steel was drawn, one who did not bow to fear. Gaze moved across the room until it rested on Ethan. His name is Ethan Cole. Gasps filled the hall. Every noble turned their head toward him. Ethan felt heat rise in his chest. His knees felt weak, but he did not look away from the queen. Ethan Cole, she continued, is no noble. He was not born to power. He has no bloodline to boast of, no riches to his name. Yet when death reached for me, it was his hand that pushed it away. The nobles stirred, their faces tight. Some whispered angrily. Ethan could see their pride burning in their eyes, but the queen's voice only grew stronger. Too long have we trusted titles over truth, names over deeds. Today, I will show you what true loyalty looks like. Ethan Cole stepped forward. His legs felt heavy as stone, but he obeyed. He walked down the long aisle, every step echoing in the chamber. He stopped before her throne and dropped to one knee, bowing his head. The queen stood, her crown shining above him. She looked down at him not with disdain, but with warmth that stunned the room. You once spoke words before me that shocked the court, words that could have ended your life. The hall grew still. Ethan felt his heart pound. The queen had not forgotten that day. But instead of punishment, I chose to see honesty. And now, after all that has come to pass, I see more than honesty. I see courage. I see loyalty. And I see a man who speaks with truth when others hide behind lies. Her words rang across the hall, strong as steel. The nobles exchanged uneasy looks. Therefore, she declared, before this court, before the people, I name Ethan Cole, my champion. From this day forth, he shall stand as my shield and my sword, honored not for his birth, but for his deeds. The hall erupted in shock. Some cried out in disbelief, others in awe. Soldiers struck their weapons against the floor in salute. Ethan lifted his head, his eyes wide. He could hardly breathe. He had expected punishment, or at best, silence. But this was beyond belief. The queen looked into his eyes. A faint smile touched her lips, the same smile she had given him that first day. Then, in front of the entire hall, she spoke the words that turned whispers into legend. You once said my figure caught your eye, she said, her tone steady yet filled with humor. And instead of taking offense, I took note. Because in your foolish courage, you showed me something no flattery ever could. You showed me truth. And it is that truth that has brought you here. The hall went silent. Every noble froze, their mouths open in shock, and the people burst into cheers. The sound shook the walls. Ethan bowed his head again, overwhelmed. His chest swelled with pride and fear and wonder all at once. He had spoken careless words, and yet they had led him here, to this moment of honor that no one could have imagined. The queen raised her hand, quieting the hall. Her voice was calm but unbreakable. Remember this day. Remember that deeds are greater than titles, and that honesty is stronger than fear. Let the name Ethan Cole be written in the history of our realm, not as a fool, but as a champion. The people shouted his name. Ethan stood, his heart burning with a fire he had never known. He looked at the queen, and she met his gaze with steady eyes. Response had been beyond belief. His life, once ordinary, now belonged to legend.